must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Broadcasting from the political command center somewhere in Africa and across the continent of Africa, right from Cairo down to Cape Town, west in Accra, east in Asmara, the Sahara region, north in Tripoli, Rwanda, Central African Republic, Mali, Cape Town, South Africa, and Harare, Zimbabwe. Good afternoon. All of you watching this program, you are welcome. It's the only television station south of the Sahara that talks about Africa. What ails Africa? What kills Africa? What can we do to improve our lives on the African continent? As a community station, we look at issues that crop up every time when we talk about the continent, conflicts, wars, guns, security, all these independence. Are African countries independent? I know very well Miriam will tell me that we are not yet there. But it's true. Some of the things change in Africa. One of them that has changed is that 36 years ago, when I left Uganda, there was no water in my compound, no tap water in the village compound, but not in the town house. Today, water, my mother takes tap to water. Congratulations to Museveni, because we live in a mountain where you used to take 2 days collecting water from down, and you carry one jerrycan upstairs, up on the hill. Thank you very much, Mr. President. But water alone, if it's drunk, you get drunk with it. Some people need the freedom on how to drink that water. That is a topic for another day. Today's topic is very, very, very interesting. It also touches water. And I believe whatever God put in water, we don't know. I am one of the few people, when the plane is flying to America, I walk free. Let me now tell you and confess to all of you that I don't sit when the plane is going to America. I try to engage the crew. Those days when I used to have a drink, Miriam, I would drink the whole bottle of cognac and drink another one and another one, because I fear water. But the Somalis seem not to fear water. The territory that we are talking about and that we are going to discuss this afternoon, Miriam, is maritime business. What is maritime business? Something to do with maritime. What is it? The water, the fish, the minerals, the gas, the boats. That's maritime transport. Who has it now? It's Kenya. Who went to apply to the court? It's Somalia. So you have to wrestle Kenya to get this type of thing out. Is the ruling in ICJ binding? That's what we want to see this afternoon. Let me take this opportunity, Miriam, quickly to invite, to introduce one of our guests, because all of us here are mainly in-house panel and analysts of Punchline Africa. I want to introduce one gentleman, a great friend of mine, a peacemaker, peace lover, a man who likes to see peace, and a man who will never agree that Kenya's one piece meal is sent away or taken away from them. Dr. Daniel Juma Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon,
Yes.
my friend David. Good to see you again after such a long time.
Yeah, introduce yourself. The platform is yours now.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Juma. I'm the country director of the Global Peace Foundation. We are a nonprofit that is keen on promoting sustainable peace and development. We believe that peace is not just absence of war, and that we have to look at it from all angles, including structural, and stability and all that. And we have been working in this region since 2010. And I'm really, really happy to work with my brother here. I remember 2018, we hosted a big conference in Kampala, which was hosted by President Museveni. 2010, we did another peace conference in Nairobi, hosted by President Kibaki. So I am particularly very passionate and concerned about what is going on in the Horn of Africa. And Kenya, as you know, has been one of the countries that has been instrumental in stabilizing the region of the Horn of Africa. So if you look at Kenya, Ethiopia, but mainly Kenya has played a very big role. And of course, Uganda also has really done well since President Museveni came on board, and he has stabilized Uganda. Although people have criticized Museveni for various things, but I believe that that old man with a big heart has done his best to stabilize that country. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to attend this talk about the maritime, what's going on in the maritime, our maritime border. And I just want to state here that I support Nairobi when they say that they will not recognize any ruling that comes out of the ICJ. And so I look forward to this discussion.
Yes.
And I'm sure you agree with me. We cannot, let me just say that we cannot let Somalia, try to complicate what's going on in the waters before they stabilize Somalia itself. They need to have internal stability, create a working governance system before they go to the sea. So what is this that they want to do in our borders, in the waters, and yet they have not been able to stabilize their country? So I look forward to this conversation today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Juma. We have worked together on a number of things. We talk, we agree on a number of things. We agree, including some of the things that Museveni has done as far as security is concerned. After all, people don't eat only democracy, they also eat security. If there is no security, you can't practice democracy. So I'm a different crop of opposition leader. I am not going to sit among the Commonwealth and offices in London and tell the London Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madame Truss, who is my friend, and tell her there is nothing Museveni has done in Uganda. They will tell me to get out of the office. I have to begin by doing that. And true, I'm a scholar. I have to balance what he has done and what he has not done, and what he has done good. When you are marking an essay and when you are teaching your students, you must balance the essay. So at times, yes, we agree and disagree with Juma, but we still remain on the same Pan-African line of peace. We need peace in the region. Thank you very much, all of you in-house panel. We have Professor Gerard Onyari. Just say hi to the public, to the gallery, to the people. Professor Gerard Onyari just disappeared again. Professor Gerard Onyari. Dr. Nyachama, take it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Welcome back. I hope you've come back from London. It is my great pleasure to participate this afternoon. This is Punch Africa TV as usual. You take the tip from the top, the tree from the top, you become the cream of the crop on African affairs, especially those who are interested to change the continent. Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nyachama, Joseph Nyachama, is an accountant by profession, but also a human resourcer. Also a man who studies, who has studied a subject of anthropology. I don't know how many people, most of us here know anthropology, the study of traits, behavior, morphology. You can tell that Mr. Tawish is from Narok, Kiligoris. That is his department. So thank you very much. Daniel Wesonga, before I come, or professors come, Daniel Wesonga, just greet the people. We want to start. Miriam is waiting, eager. Yes.
Yes, very good afternoon. Miriam Ogutu at our headquarters in Nairobi. Our guest today, Daniel and Professor Jared Onyari, Dr. Joseph Nyanchama, my brother Tarwish Lesasina, and our viewers here in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the globe who are watching us this afternoon. Indeed, it is my pleasure to be on this panel today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for your Sunday. You look like my great friend John. Some people spread a very bad rumor the whole night. Why have we become very bad people who wish others death? John is still alive and at home enjoying his one beer called Pilsner. I think people should always get out of this thing. But thank you very much. Across, Professor Onyari, good afternoon. Greet the people. I was looking for you, but you had gone to the sea.
Good afternoon, Dr. Masanga, my fellow panelists, our viewers from wherever they are, be it their morning, afternoon, evening, or night. It's nice to be here.
Thank you very much, Professor. And lastly, our man of the day, he always carries in the day special assignment, editor of mine, Samuel Olesisana Tawish from Kiligoris in Narok. Narok, is it Narok? Yes, Narok County in Kiligoris. Mr. Ruto was passing there, man, and he caused a lot of trouble. The Maasais are up in arms. Talk to us.
Very well. Good afternoon, Dr. David Masanga. Good afternoon to colleagues and family. Professor Jared Onyari, Dr. Joseph Nyanchama, Daniel Sean Wesonga, our new guest, of course, Daniel Juma, Miriam Ogutu at our headquarters, and all our viewers who are watching this program in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. My great pleasure to join you on this program, Africa Showdown. Good afternoon, Dr. Masanga.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Miriam, last is I'm handing over. Miriam, just give us the headlines. Miriam is our anchor of the day, of the year, of the minute, of the sun, the moon, and the earth. Miriam Ogutu, good afternoon. Our senior anchor, news anchor, editor of Punchline Africa Television. We have talked about Somalia so many times. And here we are today. We seem to be counting days for the ruling to come. Good afternoon.
All right, Doc. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to our guest panelist, and good afternoon to our in-house panelist, and indeed, good afternoon to our viewers. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in today. I'll just be very quick with the headlines this afternoon on the Sunday Standard. The main headline: 5 surprise ticket options for 2022 poll. And Raila, OKA chiefs, allies land plum state jobs, and Orierogo's befitting send-off. That is what we have on the front page of the Sunday Standard, and on the Daily Nation, on the Sunday Nation, sorry. Bruto to Raila, I am the only way to mountain, walking a tightrope to keep grip on Mount Kenya support. DP keeps his guns trained on the former Prime Minister, who is gaining ground with the region's elite. And then just up there, the big interview, Francis Kimemia, on the politics of disloyalty. And then just beside that, the war in Somalia 10 years on. I think very timely with the topic we have today. And Magoha seeks powers to control university fees. The story is on page 6. Sosion to teachers, I told you so. The story is on page 8 of the Sunday Nation. And that is what we have on the front pages today.
Thank you very much. On the front pages, unless anybody has a comment, I think the biggest politics that should preoccupy the Kenyan airspace and land, sea, air, and every place is the maritime conflict. The Ministry of Foreign Office of Kenya issued a statement. In their statement, they said what I had said long time ago, that this court was not worth the court. Remember, Miriam and the viewers and Daniel and others and all of you who have been following up on this will remember that I said categorically, and I want to thank those who helped me on this journey. I want to thank those who gave me more information. I want to thank everybody who told me. And I want above all to thank my teacher, my professor, who taught me how to have tools of analysis of strategy. And unfortunately, one of them is gone. Max Clifford was my friend. He taught me lots of strategy. In political science, one of the things that you do is to learn how to put a strategy. I saw this coming 4 years ago. I saw it when the former Attorney General failed to convince the court. I knew there was a wrong court. When the former Attorney General filed an application and they refused to accept the application, I knew this was a wrong court. So I moved in to dismantle the court. As usual, Matsanga, I don't lose a battle. I managed to disorganize that court from doing wrong things, because this is a court, Miriam, which has no appeal. Once they have made their decision, you can't go to any appeal chamber. You can't go to chamber 1 or chamber 5. The International Criminal Court has got an appeal chamber. If you are not happy with the trial, you have been sentenced wrongly, you will move to the appeal chamber. But the ICJ has no appeal chamber. It is finished, it is finished. When you look at what they are going to make a ruling, I was in Europe and I was in Amsterdam, which is very close to Hague. I had a few drinks of Coca-Cola. Nowadays I don't drink. I know what is going on and I know what has happened. This is a plot orchestrated, arranged, managed by international agencies. There are international countries in Europe that really wanted to see a conflict in the Indian Ocean. And for me, I'm not going to be quiet, and I'm not going to keep quiet. I go by the ruling, the decision. Kenya has done a very good thing to withdraw completely from this court. Kenya should have withdrawn from these international agencies. I don't know why Kenya waits. Then the trouble arrives. Then they start going away. Article 127 of the United Nations, of the Roma Statute of the ICC, which is not ICJ, gives Kenya to walk out. Kenya should have walked out of that organization. You saw how it brought us almost to a... Still, Kenya went to parliament. They did everything. Nobody has moved that mountain. When this case started, there is an article within the ICJ that says you must, Article 40, about that, if I'm not wrong, which says you must first of all consult the person you want to take to court. You must agree that we have a dispute. We can't solve it. We go. Somalia did not ask Kenya. Somalia.
All right. We seem to be having a bit of a technical hitch there from doctor's side, so we will wait. So as we wait for them to, for Doc to come back and continue, and for the rest of our panelists to continue, I think I'll just give us a background information on this row between Kenya and Somalia. Kenya has said, that is the latest, that it rejected the jurisdiction of the United Nations International Court of Justice, ICJ, ahead of a ruling on its long-running maritime border dispute with Somalia. The Horn of Africa neighbors have been feuding for years over a stretch of the Indian Ocean claimed by both nations and believed to hold deposits of oil and gas. Kenya announced in March that it would boycott ICJ hearings in the case after the Hague-based tribunal refused to allow further delays. The final ruling is due to be delivered on Tuesday. The delivery of the judgment will be a culmination of a flawed jurisdiction process that Kenya...
Yes.
All right.
Whenever you see Qatar, you will see there is, I want you to mark this. If you see Qatar, you will see France. There is France behind Qatar. Anywhere, in Cape Delgado, in Mozambique, Miriam, you saw Qatar was the first person to give those Al-Shabaab in Mozambique support. But who was there first? Total Oil. Have you seen where we get problems as Africans? We see these guys were peaceful. They come, they pay us, they pay everybody, they pay the prime ministers, they pay the ministers. Ministers go into oil. I want you, first of all, to look at this clip, how the Soma Oil managed to convince the world that there was oil in the Indian Ocean. And we fell for the trick. Kenya fell for the trick. But Kenya has taken a stand now that that's the stand we shall follow, and we shall not be reversing. The Kenyan people will not reverse. First of all, Miriam, before we bring in the clip, I want you to know that it is Kenya that has the territory. So if you want to wrestle it out of the territory, you have to fight Kenya. Don't you see the logic? Because Kenya is still patrolling the same border. It has the border. It is there in the Maritime. So if you want to dislodge them, you have to fight. That is in simple terms. Let's not beat about the bush. Kenya did not go to choose any country. We have been telling Somali people to cool down and come and sit on table to make an arrangement for this oil to be distributed, or they can even share the oil and do as people are doing in some places. The leadership in Mogadishu is not interested. Bring the clip to show you the history on how a deal was crafted by Prime Minister Harrier. You remember Prime Minister Harrier, the Soma deal? I don't know whether...
Prime Minister Hassan
Harrier, yes. You remember the Soma deal in London? And I'm sure my friend Abdallah, what is his name again?
Abdisamad, I think.
My friend, yes. Abdallah Ahmad Ali is going to watch this one with a lot of concern because he's not giving up. Is it ready now?
Yes.
Yes, the panel, you can look at that clip. That investigative piece.
Kenya's going to ICJ brings more chaos than tranquility in the region. The Kenya's consent to be taken to ICJ under Article 36 was not accepted. And Kenya has a mandate today to take back and do what we call a declaration as to whether they would like to take part in this ICJ. ICJ is not a court of a criminal nature. ICJ is a court of consent. If Kenya wants to withdraw from ICJ, Kenya can take one step back, right to the court, and stop cooperation with the court. Let the court take its measures until they solve the problems that you see that have been talked about. A Somali judge presiding over a corrupt bench making a decision, forcing Kenya into a corner to appear in this court, even when they are not prepared. The African Union Charter is very clear on the matters of the maritime borders and all the borders of African countries. A constitutive channel that of dialogue on the table could bring about a peaceful end to this dispute that has actually become a pain in the Indian Ocean enclave. It is very sad that the president of Somalia, President Famijo, tries to play to the gallery of imperial whims by calling a bluff of what they had agreed and the chairmanship of African Union. It is very sad again to make it very, very bad to look like African countries are fighting over borders that were demarcated without their knots. And yet, we are looking for a single passport where all Africans will be able to travel in Africa without the boundaries. It is sad again when you look at the trade, the African trade, that charter which Somalia itself has endorsed and ratified, which will allow free trade in Africa without the borders, and then Somalia looks for a barrier that could bring about hardships in the region. Given all this, I think Kenya has a right to go back to the court, to write to the court, to tell them we have reconsidered, and our declaration is that cooperation of this court will depend on conditions like the presiding judge leaves the bench. Thank you, viewers.
Sisi ni nchi ambayo inapenda amani. Sisi ni nchi ambayo inapenda kuishi kwa usalama na amani na upendo na majirani wetu. Sisi ni nchi ambayo imejitolea mpaka maisha ya vijana wetu na mali ya taifa letu kulete amani katika nchi mbalimbali za ulimwengu, sio tu majirani wetu. Tumekuwa katika sehemu nyingi sana duniani tukisaidiana kuhakikisha ya kwamba kupitia UN, kupitia AMISOM, kuhakikisha ya kwamba tumewezesha wananchi kuwa na amani. Lakini ningependa pia niseme, tukiwa taifa ambalo lapenda amani, sisi pia sio taifa ambaye itakubali kuingiliwa ama kutishwa ama tukubali hata nchi moja ya taifa letu la Kenya iingie kwa mikono ya watu wengine. Na sisi tuko tayari kulinda nchi yetu na amani ya nchi yetu vile tuko tayari kulinda amani za nchi zingine. Sisi hatutaweza kukubali mtu yeyote aweze kusema ya kwamba anadai sehemu yoyote ya nchi yetu.
Thank you very much, viewers. You have heard the president has said not 1 inch of the soil of the people of Kenya will go anywhere. It is a clear indication that Kenya will defend its territory. Kenya is going to do so. Welcome to the show, Samson Omechi Ongera. let me start with our guest, Daniel Juma. From the events as a peacemaker, how would you start? Where would you start? When can you start to do what we call benchmark? Do we call it? What is the first name when you want to do peace talks? To arrange a timetable. Can you sit these two countries anywhere on table? Is there time for any agreement at all, if there is any? I think time is gone. What about the ruling when it comes on Tuesday? Who is sitting on this territory at the moment? Of course, you know. Tell us more.
Thank you. I agree. Now Kenya is sitting on this territory, and if you look at, and we have to be fair. Let's be fair. I think there was an agreement with the previous administration in Somalia, and that this boundary, these maritime boundaries, will run diagonally, and this has been the status quo, and tradition demands that if you are coming in as a leader of a country, if you are elected today president, let's say if you're elected today president, you have to honor those agreements that previous presidents were able to sign, because when you are there on behalf of your country. So you cannot unilaterally come in and quash previous agreements that Kenya and Somalia entered. So, and if you look at it, let's say, for example, that you agree with what Somalia is saying, that that the line will go down, it means, and you look at Tanzania, Tanzania's, it remains diagonal. So that means Kenya will be squeezed.
Go down, Dr. Daniel, go down where? It is, even, I have never seen maps going down.
Yes.
Maps go diagonally, not horizontally.
Absolutely.
Yes. I have never drawn a map that goes down. Down where? If you go down, then South Africa will be found in Morocco.
Yes.
Then the whole of Africa will be solid. Yes. Where will the countries go? Europe or Indian Ocean or Mediterranean Sea? Yes.
So I think the court has been unfair to the country. I think the judgment, if it is issued, Kenya will have been unheard. You cannot issue a judgment when one of the parties, was not a player into that. So I think they should have been, the court should have been patient. They should have been patient and postpone whatever judgment that they want to come up with. But most importantly, I think negotiations, the way Nairobi has called for, we have to, Nairobi and Mogadishu must, sit down and talk. How come we're able to talk about issues? We are able to talk about, right now we have Kenyan soldiers, of course, in Somalia, helping to stabilize that country. There's so many things that we can talk about, but when it comes to the maritime issue, you rush to the ICJ. So I agree, and I personally agree with the MFA, and it is good that Kenya is now the chair of the Security Council. So I think Kenya has to use the leverage it can to be able to ward off this, and we will never allow, as a country, we will not allow this government to cede any of our territory. The government of President Kenyatta will not be, the Kenyan people will not agree that you cede our territory to Somalia. That one we will refuse.
Okay, thank you very much. The 1963 and the 1964 African Organization of African Unity and constitutive arrangements on boundaries in Cairo. You remember the Cairo conference, all of you. Those who have read African history and politics. The Cairo conference was very clear on the constitutive arrangements that in case there is a problem where African countries would sit and go through AU to put up a mediation, a sort of constitutive arrangement to solve the problem. Dr. Najama, to me it looks like we have lost the 1963 and the 64 Cairo Declaration. We are redrawing the borders. Karl Peters and the Bismarck, the German and the Austrian Chancellor, 1884, did draw the borders of Africa unilaterally. They did not ask any African. In fact, for me, Uganda was supposed to be sold to Germany. The Germans wanted to take Uganda. Then Germans swapped Uganda with another island. I have never even visited it before. I don't know where it is. So we were being sold. They sold the human beings. They sold the territory. What do you think? Where can we go from here? I do agree with the Minister of Foreign Affairs that enough is enough with this court. And that one we are not reversing. Some of us are in support because this court is a very dangerous court. This court is a court that does not give you a peaceful night. It will bring you uncoordinated nights forever. And right now we don't need it. Let it go, let it make its decisions. Nobody will accept to it. Nyachama.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Miriam, Professor Nyari, and others who are discussion. Firstly, let me, Dr. Masanga, wholly and exclusively associate myself with the sentiments of Dr. Daniel Juma. Absolutely, I do. And you have posed a question to me about the drawing of the boundaries. Dr. Masanga, let us be honest, and I hope some of these mediocre African leaders are listening. The issue driving some of these people are personal interests. They are just cheated with a few promises from the quarters, and then they agree to distort their continent. Boundaries were drawn. And you ask the question, why do you need even the sea when you are unable to control the land? And there has been civil war, people being killed. Dr. Masanga, for me, the whole thing is hinged on personal interests of leaders who were not even born, in fact, the time the boundaries were drawn. I don't know who told them later that this is the direction the boundaries should go. This man in Somalia, maybe he doesn't understand the word diagonal in English. Maybe it has been concocted by the French language, and it means the other way around. Let us be honest, and the surveyors are over. You cannot draw the map horizontally. It has to be diagonal so that, because the land naturally is not seamless either in rectangle form or in square. That's why diagonal is the known dimension of drawing boundaries. And this genesis of horizontal, I don't know where it came from. Dr. Masanga, I think the problem are the hidden hand from those people who think they are very powerful. I think you have learned a creep from our beloved president, Uhuru Kenyatta to be specific. I heard him say, the country will not cede even an inch. Professor Nyari in the room, he can agree with me, and those who are Christians who are in the room. You remember a man called David? You know, Goliath thought he was very powerful. And let not Somalia be cheated that is being supported by powerful leaders. Let them read the story of David versus Goliath. You know David, what he did? he carried 4 stones. And you know, most people have never known why David carried 4 stones. Others say it was lack of faith, that if he misses to hit Goliath, he will draw the other one. No. Goliath had 4 brothers. Goliath had 4 brothers. David knew that fact. That is why he carried 5 stones. For each one of them, should they decide to come for his aid. Are you getting it? So the announcement of President Uhuru Kenyatta is this: come on, whether you are being packed for other powerful forces, I have 4 stones on my porch. 1 for you, Somali, and the others for your Nikoti supporters. Meaning, either, as Dr. Juma rightly put it, we sit down and discuss on these matters. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, if you look at this language, the line is drawn. The 4 stones are in the porch. Bring it on. 1 for you, Somalia, and there is each stone for your unrealistic supporters who want to create conflict and earn where they never saw. You know, Dr. Masanga, these people from West, some of them, they give with one hand under the flashing light of cameras and they take with the others in the shadows. We cannot accept. We want peace, as Daniel said, and Kenya is already occupying the maritime waters. And if it is disturbed, it is going to be war. The only option is peace. Dr. Masanga, for now, I submit. And I wonder which court is this, which is forcing to bring it this verdict. I advise them to withhold the judgment until things cool down. Dr.
Now,
Masanga, I submit.
At the moment, whether they withhold or they don't, Kenya is not their medium, isn't it? Kenya is gone. They can as well do whatever they want to do. But Kenya will not tolerate, will not listen to any of the rulings. So it looks like the matter shifts and goes to where I have been all the time telling people. You remember United Nations Security Council, that round table. And I've been saying it. From day one, I told the people that the only way that you can stop all this madness, because the leader across in Mogadishu is not interested. He's not interested. Qatar, Somalia is used as a satellite state anyway. It's being told, do what we want. Why is it that Turkey is moving its fleet? Turkey is moving all the biggest fleet. We defeated the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was defeated. Everything is wrong with Turkey. Even our football is wrong. You even bring a Turkish person in Kenya to teach Kenyans football, and they lost 5-0. Are you not worthy? Are you sure that you people, do you see where? What the hell is this? You are, no. This is what is going on. Why do you, Ruto brings a Turkish fake investor. You now bring a Turkish fake coach. And we are given 5 goals, nil. Some of us like this football. Why do you go to Turkey? Why is Turkey interested in dismembering East Africa? Those are the questions of Professor Nyali. I want to hear. Then I come to Tawit. Prepare your statement. Then I come to Daniel. Then return to Miriam. Professor Nyali, we lost Turkey 5-0. Now 5-0, surely. Have you ever heard of that footballer here?
Yeah,
and you're going to bring him. No, this Turkish could be even a terrorist. The coach that you brought, because the other man was It's not heard anywhere. Nobody is telling us where we stand. Tell us. Onyari, the ball is in your court.
Yes, Dr. Masanga, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm not a fan of football, so I may not be able to comment on that. I am not interested in what happens in the arena of football. But let me just confine myself to the discussion we have about the maritime. Dr. Masanga, today I want to argue just like a layman, like someone who has never read books. One of the reasons I've said that, Dr. Masanga, our boundaries are porous. We have not marked our boundaries and secured them. For the last 58 years now, Dr. Masanga, that is not right. There is someone who is sleeping on the job. Two, Dr. Masanga, I and yourself and other panelists, we did not draw the boundaries. So why do we go and say that you cannot even fight an inch of Kenya? Do you know how the boundaries were drawn? Why don't you just go to the people who sat in Berlin conference in a room and they decided to partition Africa? They have got those maps and we see what they do, Dr. Masanga. Why do we want to invent the wheel? Whether it's the Hagon or horizontal, let us go to the colonial masters. Our colonial master is Britain. They should tell us how those boundaries were drawn. Dr. Masanga, sometimes let me tell you, it is good to have peace and being right. We have never utilized the resources of the Indian Ocean. If I said, let me just argue, like a Raymond, we have got oil in Turkana. Of what benefit does he have to the country, Dr. Masanga? And you have given people, they just draw at the end of it when they have taken their money.
Is it you or somebody else? Is it you?
Allow me, Dr. Masanga, let me just make a case. They draw, and then they give you. What kind of argument and stupidity is that, Dr. Masanga? When we lose almost 600 billions every year to corruption, the money which went to Arar and Kimurere Dam is enough for us to have secured our oil in Turkana, Dr. Masanga. Well, I agree with with our president, and I don't want to contradict him, Dr. Masanga. What was rightly handed over from our forefathers, Dr. Masanga, we should defend it up to the last inch and mile of our blood that we have to protect the territory of Kenya. But those who are in government, those who are charged, Dr. Masanga, let them secure our boundaries. You know, we have got a dispute with your country, Migingo Island. You saw your president was listening. He said that the water is his and the land is ours. What kind of argument is that? When we have got a lot of water coming to Nzoia, name them River Kucha, and all of them going to Lake Victoria. I am making this point, Dr. Masanga. Let us sit down and secure our borders. Let us go to the colonial masters. You are in Britain, and we can give you an assignment. You can go to the archive, you can go to the library, and you can bring us maps. Let us not fight. And one of the things, Dr. Masanga, we are dealing with terrorists. The other day I was telling you, you can engage these people, and you are not for me. These people have sold those parts of the water to Turkey. And now we are entering ourselves, and with the Turkish, Dr. Masanga, let me tell you, sometimes I'm not happy with the way the Russians and the Turkish and the Chinese do things, Dr. Masanga. They will pretend to be your friends when they are just hitting you. So from where I sit, I am with my president. What was handed over by our forefathers, we will secure. But as I want to submit, like Dr. Juma said, there is no task which is so difficult to another human being, Dr. Masanga. If only we give listening and sitting around the table. In any event, I have given a recommendation, you know. I am a peace and conflict expert, Dr. Masanga. We can agree with our brothers from Somalia. Those are our brothers. And sincerely, with honest and sincerity, I want to say, why should I go to war with my brother? We can make use of that resource and we share all of us. Where are the Kenya Defense Forces? Are they not Somalia? Are they not trying to pacify Somalia? Are we not good neighbors who care for Somalia? So, Dr. Masanga, let us give dialogue a chance. The president, we have got able leaders and they can talk as brothers. Let us not listen to the whims of the outside continent. People who came to the continent of Africa took all our resources. They misused us as cheap labor. Let us not go back again, Dr. Masanga, and we give this part of the region conflict, the conflicts and the way we are, the region is destabilized. Dr. Masanga, let us not go to war again. We can talk and we can discuss. As you have said, boundaries in the ocean, they go horizontally and not vertically. If we go by the reasoning of Somalia, then we have to go to Somalia downwards to Tanzania. Tanzania goes downwards, so and South Africa will end up not having an Indian Ocean. Dr. Masanga, I submit.
That is a very good divergent view. Professor Nyari is of the opinion that all the territories around Kenya are not marked. So any intruder can come in and take part of the territory. That is in summary. I can summarize for him as a junior under him as an intern. You know, we have a professor and a doctor. And as an intern, I have summarized that any person can come and build a house, Tawish, near Kirigoris, and say, this is our territory. And please, you try to drag me into Mugingo Island. I am not the head of state of Republic of Uganda. Neither do I eat any fish from that country. I eat fish from Kenya. And the Kenyan fish and the British fish are tilapia. And I eat salmon fish from Scotland. So please, I am asking you to forgive me. Give me out of this Mugingo Island. I know I have been roasted several times on Facebook, but I am not the one who took over this island. I am begging you people to forgive me and don't slaughter me over Mugingo Island. I don't have any plane that transports fish from Entebbe Airport. I am not even having a bicycle. My bicycle is here. It's on the road here. I don't have. So please give me a break. I know what Onyali has been talking for 6 years about Mugingo is hitting me. So don't worry. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, if you are hearing, they are saying Mugingo Island. You say the water is ours, but the island is yours. So please, sort this mess out. I don't know. I am not the one who ordered the army to go there. I have no power. I am powerless 37 years. Please give me a chance to live for the rest of the remaining time with Professor Nyari. So, Kawish, I hope you also don't touch Mugingo.
Yes, and I abandon you, Dr. Masanga.
I beg your pardon.
You have argued your case, and I abandon you, and I will not drag you to the issue. You are not less concerned. But what I was trying to
my lawyer, Dr. Juma Daniel, is here, will tell you that I have no problem at all. But thank you very much. Let's move on. Tawish.
Very well.
Apart from Mugingo, you see the position of Professor Onyari. Professor Onyari is saying that the Kenyan government has been sitting on the job. And the time has come to call them up. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. and thank you to our colleague panelists for the submissions you've made. Indeed, Dr. Masanga, you should calm down because you don't have to condemn yourself because none of the panelists here has indeed condemned you in as far as the Mugingo dispute between Kenya and Kenya and Uganda is concerned. That is as far as I interpret Professor Jared Onyari's, of course, submission on that particular topic. Dr. Masanga, back to what we are discussing, I wouldn't quite drift away from what my other panelists have spoken about as regards to the situation between Kenya and Somalia on the maritime conflict. Indeed, Dr. Masanga, much has been said, much has been spoken. First of all, it will be, I would say, naive of me to attempt even to contradict or go against what the leadership of Kenya through its President Uhuru Kenyatta the position they have taken in as far as this maritime dispute is concerned. You have played that clip, and I think even the colleague panelists have made a submission to that effect, that indeed President Uhuru Kenyatta has confirmed that Kenya will not cede any ground or allow any of an inch of its soil or territorial boundary really to be taken away by anybody, let alone Somalia. So that in itself tells you that Kenya is quite prepared really to safeguard its territorial boundary. It does not matter what it's going to take. But what is important by the end of the day is that its territorial boundaries are protected, the soil and the land is being protected for youth today and for the future generation. Dr. Masanga, if I may just get a deeper update on this matter, I think it was imprudent in the first place for Somalia to go ahead or proceed with this maritime dispute at the ICJ. Because as it is, it does not portend well, and especially as we wait for the outcome come Tuesday this coming week. Kenya has already pulled out of this entire case, the entire proceedings, and they have already vowed not to honor any of the outcome or verdict that the ICJ is going to give. So in itself, it puts Somalia more so in a very precarious situation because where will it have to go or head with the verdict that ICJ will be issuing, given that Kenya now has protested and has withdrawn its continued participation in as far as this maritime case is concerned. Dr. Masanga, Somalia needs Kenya and of course African countries, like we have always spoken. There are so many troops who have been contributed to Somalia to try and pacify that region, to try and ensure that we attain the sustainable peace and security in Somalia. That in itself should have rung in the heads and minds of the leadership of Somalia to see into it that there is more in terms of the interrelationship between these eastern countries, the East African countries and Somalia, more than the greedy Western power allies that, of course, are trying to help Somalia or are trying to hide behind this particular dispute really in helping Somalia. Dr. Masanga, it will also be unwise, of course, for Somalia to abandon the kind of approach that the East African nations have been taking in as far as making sure that they wipe out the Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia and make sure that Somalia and the region are actually safe, they are secure, and they are at peace. In terms of Dr. Masanga, I think even when you look into the approaches and the initiatives that Kenya was trying to engage in finding a solution to this maritime dispute, and most of the African Union intervention that, of course, Somalia protested, I think this would have given us a long-lasting, homebred or homegrown solution that would have been achieved in a peaceful way, other than going to the ICJ. Because as it is now, the destiny, of course, of these two countries still remain deeply interconnected. The only way we can have a solution on this matter is that Somalia has to rethink its position, has to rethink its strategy, has to rethink its move in solving this dispute by reaching out to Kenya and using a homegrown solution, a diplomatic approach, and find a solution to this dispute. Because again, as it is, I do not see Kenya really agreeing on anything that the ICJ is likely going to rule on Tuesday. I do not see that Kenya is going to cede any of its territorial boundary to Somalia or any other nation. So in itself, therefore, we need to go back to the drawing board and ask, how can we find a solution through a peaceful mechanism in as far as this conflict is concerned? I submit that, Charlie.
Miriam, you had something. I saw something.
Before you come in, yes, something there that you've mentioned and also Tawish has mentioned. And we know that Kenya is a member of the United Nations, is a non-permanent member to the United Nations Security Council. And usually decisions that have been made at ICJ or ICC or such UN institutions, usually the United Nations Security Council gets to implement those decisions. So Kenya having pulled out of the ICJ, and now Kenya being a member of the United Nations Security Council, which will have to implement the decision by the ICJ, where does this leave Kenya in that position and as a country?
Miriam, that's a very important question, but let's listen to Daniel Wesonga.
Yes,
in a nutshell, you see where we are heading with Miriam's very serious question, a complicated question. Perhaps a man like Dr. Daniel Juma will be able to answer me. I have the answer, but Daniel will have to try it. But let's try Daniel Wesonga. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Masanga David, and of course, a very robust conversation on the maritime border issue between Kenya and Somalia. And in my submission, I'll really try to put it in 3 pages of our presentation. First, you mentioned a very, very critical matter of these historical treaties which were demarcated by the colonialists. And this is what most countries, not only in Africa, even in Europe, follow when they are able to, they want to locate their boundaries. And in matters of Somalia, and more specifically, the boundary along the Indian Ocean, you have to realize that the treaties actually indicated that these boundaries be demarcated at an angle of 45 degrees horizontally, not vertically, not diagonally like Somalia wants to put it. And these were done in regard to the landmass. Where the Somali landmass ends, that is where the maritime border starts, and it moves horizontally all the way to where perhaps maybe it meets the other Asian countries. Where the Kenyan landmass ends is where the boundary begins and goes horizontally, and that marks where also the Tanzanian landmass border begins, and it goes in a similar manner, just like Professor. Yes.
Let's get our viewers clear. Diagonally is that way, isn't it?
Diagonally is this way.
Horizontally is that. Horizontal is this or that. Let's get it very clear.
Can you come up again? Can you explain that again?
Yes.
No, Miriam. Before my brother comes in, Miriam, you are in the studio. I failed mathematics. Daniel, I have to say that.
Just try one more time. Horizontal is where, and diagonal.
Hey, I don't want people to laugh at me. Horizontal is this way. Diagonally is that way. So Kenya wants horizontal.
Yes.
200 nautical miles. Horizontally. Diagonally is what Mr. From the diagonal, from one angle to the other angle apex. Now I am clear. Miriam, please.
Good job. Good job.
You got it right, Doc.
Age is catching up with me. You are bound to. I need PS to work out this. So basically, that is what Somalia wants us to go diagonally until we meet in Australia. That means Kenya will not have a port of Mombasa. We shall be landlocked.
We will give up Lamu even.
Yes. If I was me, I would have just ordered for troops to enter. And, how do you tell us we go diagonal? Surely. No. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Masanga. And of course, you have put it in a very, very good perspective. So I believe our viewers are able to digest whatever we are discussing here. So now to proceed with my point, I believe if we have to demarcate the boundaries diagonally the way Somalia, the government of Somalia wants, it means it will disrupt the other boundaries that Kenya has, Tanzania, and all other countries that are that have the share of the Indian Ocean in the African continent. So that will actually spark up a very, very vicious disagreements between all these member states. Because once you take part of the Indian Ocean from Kenya, Kenya will go on demanding a share from Tanzania using the same ruling by ICJ. It could actually spark such kind of disagreement between these countries. So I think that treaty demarcation, which puts it at 45 degrees horizontally, should actually be the one to be used. Number two, we have to look at this history of this kind of disagreement between Kenya and Somalia before President Farmajo came into office. The previous leadership actually had agreed with the government of Kenya to settle this matter out of ICJ. It was only until Farmajo came into power that the situation again fell out of hand and it started escalating. So to me, I think there's a higher percentage of contribution of this conflict from the leadership of President Mohamed Farmajo. That is why he has been unable to sit down with the Kenyan leadership and be able to bring an end to this kind of melee. And to me, that is something that should actually be given a keen interest, because we cannot settle it out of court until we have a willing leadership in Somalia, which can be able to sit down with the leadership of Kenya and be able to settle down matters amicably. That is the only way to solve this matter, by the way, Miriam. Number two, we have to also look at us, ICJ. What made Kenya to be skeptical of the ruling by ICJ? Number one, we had Somalia trying to sneak in a judge in the jury who was actually a Somali of Somali origin.
Somalia did not try. It happened. The judge was part of the judges who ruled over this case, so he was present.
Yes, Miriam, and I believe before they formulated this bench, there should have been some kind of due diligence done to ensure that this particular judge does not make his way into the jury. So to me, I believe it did not happen by coincidence. This was something which was well thought out. And if it were not for the Kenyan government through lobbyists like Dr. Masanga David, this judge could have continued sitting in the bench. And you know, as a human being, as someone who came from Somalia, he would have been biased in some kind of a way. So that made Kenya to bail out of the ICJ. Number two, we had a map which had very, very critical evidence on how this border should be and not the way Somalia wants it to be. This map disappeared mysteriously, Miriam, from ICJ. So as a party which is before a bench in ICJ, how do you feel when a map which holds very crucial evidence, which should actually guide the bench in making out a ruling on this critical matter, disappears mysteriously in ICJ? That actually portrays a picture of where the judgment could actually could have been in some manner lopsided, and Kenya would have been the one on the offensive. So I think, Miriam, ICJ holds no position, it holds no credibility to actually give a ruling to this particular matter. And I stand with my country, I stand with the likes of Dr. Masanga, that Kenya should not give a listening ear to whatever ruling that ICJ will give in regards to this maritime border law, because initially it has been seen as a biased court. It has been seen as a court which gives ruling but does not have any enforcement mechanism to ensure that its ruling are followed to the letter. But for my main point is that we shall not adhere to what ICJ gives simply because it is a biased court, and it's more likely to fuel this kind of disagreement between Kenya and Somalia. And therefore, Kenya and Somalia should look at any other mechanism outside the court which will be able to broker truce between the two countries. And you talked about Kenya being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. So I believe there is where we should refer to the letter that Dr. Masanga last week wrote to the UN as a line manager of the ICJ, so that it gives direction to ICJ, so that it straightens up things to ensure that Kenya and Somalia are able to sit on the table in a dialogue and also outside the court, so that we are able to reach at an outside court agreement with Somalia. I believe that should be the way. Let UN intervene. Let them give guidelines. Let them give advice to these two parties so that they can be able to sit amicably and be able to break the ice. I submit.
You are saying UN intervene and do what? Kenya has quit. Lady and gentlemen, Miriam asked a question, and Daniel, you have said very well the other 2 points. This last point, intervene and do what? The Kenyans are simply saying, Daniel Juma, the Kenyans are saying, we are not interested. Whatever you want to do, we are not interested. Let the matter come before the UN. Kenya, Miriam asked, what will Kenya do? It is a member of a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. The matter is going to come to court. They are the people who pay the court. Your question is very complicated and very deep-rooted.
United Nations Security Council implements decisions made.
Implements decisions that are made. If you refuse to adhere to the warrants of arrest, when UN matter is between UN and the ICC, they are the ones going to order for your being looked for. So what does Kenya do? Is a member of the United Nations Security Council, non-member, permanent membership. Perhaps you have knowledge over that.
Yeah, so I know that Kenya is a non-permanent member of UNSC, and that is perhaps one of the reasons why ICJ should have listened to what Kenya is saying. I do not think that it is right. If Kenya was not a member, if Kenya was a permanent member of the council, then we would have just vetoed that report. But since Kenya was very, very clear, and the reasons are very, very clear, and some of the arguments given here in this panel are also clear. Our boundaries, as you know, in political science, our boundaries were drawn by the colonialists. They drew our boundaries.
Okay.
I cannot go back and start saying that I want a piece of Uganda or I want a piece of Somalia. It's not possible at this stage to go back to that discussion. And that's one of the reasons why we need to look at the spirit of the conversation here. And that's why I agree with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, that we do not recognize the process. And we are allowed, even in Kenyan court. Remember the other day when we had this issue in court where, judges found that the president was not given a fair hearing. He was not properly summoned. He was not given a fair hearing, and therefore that issue cannot stand. It is the same issue. If we do not agree on the process, the proceedings, the judicial process, and also legitimacy, because again, is the court legitimate in its trying to adjudicate over this issue? And if we do that, let's say if we go the way that the court wants to go, it means tomorrow Tanzania will go to court.
Okay.
And say they also want they also want to make a diagonal. So it's not possible. I think it's the UN should not. There's something in court called judicial restraints, and this is one of the areas that this court should have had restraints. Judicial restraint should have applied in this area. Say we restrain ourselves. You may have this or restrain and take it back to.
Maybe the ruling could come that way. What do you think?
I'm hoping that is what, and
if the ruling comes that way, then Matsanga is winning.
Yeah, then Matsanga will have won the day.
Yes, because I am the one who came in and dismantled.
Yes.
The bad judge, and then followed by exposing the bad court.
Courts cannot agree to adjudicate over all issues. Even the Supreme Court. In the US, the Supreme Court does not just accept all cases.
Yes.
No,
it should have just, in fact, it would have just said this cannot happen here.
Yeah, just have restrain yourself. Yeah. Yes.
Miriam, there you are, but we still have an elephant in the house.
Yes, indeed. Can I perhaps just bring up some of the things the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Friday?
Yes.
In addition to withdrawing its participation from the current case, Kenya also joined many other members of the United Nations in withdrawing its recognition of the court's compulsory jurisdiction. And Kenya announced in March that it will boycott ICJ hearings in the case after the Hague-based tribunal refused to allow further delays. We saw how that happened. And of course, the delivery of the judgment will be the culmination of a flawed judiciary process that Kenya has had reservations with and withdrawn from. That is part also of the statement that was issued on Friday. And of course, the Foreign Affairs Ministry has accused the court of obvious and inherent bias in resolving the dispute. As a sovereign nation, Kenya shall no longer be subjected to an international court or a tribunal without its express consent. So the issue of consent, and I think you talked about it, and I think when Kenya was raising the issue around April, Kenya had 5 issues with the International Court of Justice. This was one of them.
I want to guide the panel. There are 2 words, consent and a complementarity. Anyone who wants to learn international relations and international law, complementarity, ICC, should not just come and start picking people. ICC is a complementarity status. It comes in when called. It comes in to help the national jurisdiction, which is very clear. When a court is in Kenya, you don't come and usurp the powers of the national court. The other one is the word Miriam has just used. What is the word? That word? The two. Consent. You can't do without my consent. We have first to sit and agree that these oil blocks, we have failed to share them. Therefore, I am bringing the case. That is where Kenya has a point. It hinges there. Somalia never wrote to Kenya to say. It did not even recognize the previous agreements that were agreed upon. So there we have a cliffhanger situation waiting. But in the last minutes that we have, let's briefly and be brief on this. Should we sit and look at the countries that fund Somalia every day while they enjoy our food in Kenya? I'm now asking a very serious question. Daniel, I'll start with Professor Onyari. Should Kenya sit and watch these countries that are encouraging Somalia, that paid the legal bills, that are giving Somalia arms, that are sending a fleet of ships in the Indian Ocean?
Professor, could you please mute your device? It's really...
Dr. Nyachama, yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Professor Onyari?
Yeah, I'm saying, Dr. Masanga, that's a good question. If, we hold a very serious seat in the United Nations Security as a member of the Security Council. So I hope, Dr. Masanga, we can use negotiation skills, we can still engage. And if we have evidence that there are some countries which are engaging in this dispute, Dr. Masanga, I hope that we should bring them forward. But
I think, Onyari, today you woke up from a different angle. You are still thinking of negotiations. We have passed the negotiation. Kenya has told you it doesn't want to know. It doesn't want to hear anything to do with that court.
Do you want me to say that we can't reach? Dr. Masanga, the age I've reached is the age of engagement and discussion. And I know if we have got evidence that there are some countries which are interfering, we will be able to engage them in a negotiation table, Dr. Masanga. And that is the most civil way to go. We can't say that we don't want to engage them. Of what interest is it going to gain us? We may take that kind of decision. In the long run, Dr. Masanga will come back to the engage. So
but whom do you engage now if the court rules in favor of them? How do you engage them?
Dr. Masanga, the rules of natural justice say that you cannot be condemned and add. That one, take it over. We are going to be condemned and add. And we say, when you find Dr. Masanga, that the court is going to be biased against you, that kind of judgment, even if it comes the way it comes, you don't honor it.
So, yeah, thank you. That you don't honor it. But the question we are asking, what evidence?
Some of the evidence and the experts were moved from the court file. And that is it, Dr. Masanga. That one, again, good, Dr. Masanga. You hear what the Minister for Foreign Affairs is saying? We cannot be dragged to court without our consent. That's what we have been saying here, Dr. Masanga. So
you are right.
Media, the word go.
Miriam, probably, thank you very much coming here and bringing Dr. Nyachama, and then we have countries. You take it from there. A country, our main question was, who funds Somalia?
All right. And before that, perhaps I just take us back a few years ago. That is in 2009, when Somalia first started auctioning these blocks. Kenya Land, Somalia was auctioning these blocks in London. And since then, the maritime dispute between Somalia and Kenya has attracted the interest of global powers like the US, UK, France, Italy, and Norway. And the UK, for example, has shown support for Somalia, and that is because Somalia, it has a longer relationship with Somalia in terms of onshore and offshore oil explorations. For instance, British Petroleum, that is BP, had oil exploration concessions in Somalia from the 1980s and 1991, while Somalia plunged into violence after the ousting of President Siad Barre. A decade later, in 2012, as violent conflict raged in Somalia, it emerged that Britain was involved in a secret high-stakes dash for oil in Somalia, with the government offering humanitarian aid and security assistance in the hope of a stake in the beleaguered country's future energy. And of course, Norway is backing Somalia too. It has been reported that the country was one of the main bidders at the Somalia Oil and Gas Conference that took place in London. This would have something to do with the fact that Somalia's Prime Minister then, Hassan Harie, was a Norwegian citizen, and that Kenya expelled Norwegian oil giant Statoil in the country. And of course, US and Italy and France, I think they've been supporting Kenya in that regard, but UK and Norway, they took sides with Somalia. And of course, now we see countries like Turkey and Qatar and where they lie. So it's very much deep-rooted there.
Now, you have brought it very nicely. Dr. Joseph Nyachama, do we sit and dine with these countries in Nairobi?
Especially UK.
Yes, okay. Do we? No, let's be honest. The Qatar has caused us a lot of problems. You know, the Sheikh of Qatar came here with his dressed like whatever, impressed the president that he was going to sort this matter out of court. Now, today, we have a problem here. They are not talking at all. They are not talking. The other time I said, we might be here one morning, we might hear that Al-Shabaab is joining the government in Mogadishu. And don't be surprised, Daniel Juma and others, don't be surprised, because you have seen what has happened to the Taliban. They are now back in Juba, in Qatar again. So don't be shocked that we might be having very seriously discussions going behind our backs that tomorrow Al-Shabaab has agreed to cross over and form government of national unity in Mogadishu. We don't know our troops will be. So briefly, what do we do with the countries that are supporting, that paid the bill, that paid everything, the accommodation? Because I have a list and the documents I managed to pick while I was in The Hague. I managed to pick all the bills, and I know the country, the credit cards, how they were paying it. What do we do with countries like Qatar?
Thank you, Dr. Firstly, Dr. Masanga, you must know this. Even yourself. Do you know that most people who portray themselves as your friends could be undercover haters pretending to be your friends?
I know.
Then you must be wise enough. You must be wise enough to know how to deal with people pretend to be your friends, but they are undercover haters. Remember, Dr. Masanga here, this world is interdependent. Once you have isolated those undercover haters who pretend under the flashing light of cameras that they are your friends, but in the shadows they are supporting Somalia.
Are any on this panel today?
Then you must engage, to that extent, I agree with Professor Nyari, some aspect of diplomacy And you must know where you sit in the dining table so that you don't eat poisonous food.
I think, gentlemen.
Dr. Masanga, let me finish. Let me finish, Dr. Masanga. Dr. Masanga, today I want also to tell you this. Yes. Do not throw the stone in the marketplace. Your mother could be present. So you don't, even if you realize that they are supporting, how you engage them diplomatically to show them that you are aware. If they are wise. I
can see Dr. Onyali laughing. This is a very, you have combined forces today, but it's okay. You don't throw a stone in a marketplace because you don't know whom it is going to hit. It could hit your mother. Yes, I know. I've got it.
You see, Dr. Masanga, what I'm saying, there are these several countries where even our citizens depend on, so you must be very diplomatic on how you edge them out and express your displeasure with their support of the enemy. That is what I mean. You know, they are also wise. They can see the diplomatic relation is going to strain, and they pull away from Somalia equally diplomatically. Because, remember, we are interdependent. So you do not create a lot of conflict from all fronts. Because we usually say, Dr. Masanga, if you refrain from one moment of anger, it will save you 100 days of regret. What I would advise the Kenyan government is once it identifies who are the supporters of its enemy, it needs to be very diplomatic on how to express its displeasure. Of course, if they don't comply, then they need to move to gear number 2. So you don't bring the conflict immediately. The forces will be too much for you.
Okay.
Dr. Masanga, that is my view, and I submit.
I thank you very much, Dr. Najema. I can see the seriousness of submission. You are not joking today. Don't throw a stone in the market. It could hit your mother. Your mother could be part of it. The people stoned. Tawish. In Grigori's market, don't try a stone. Because your mom could be walking in the market.
Sure, that's right. And I think
in short, let's narrow this. The Najama and Onyali seem to be saying now the things have reached a point of further negotiation, diplomatically, to find out, isn't it? Soft ground landing. My position is that it passed the stage, and mine and Miriam, I think Miriam is still on my side. It passed the stage of even talking, because Kenya has said they don't want to talk. Kenya again is a non-member on non-rotational member, non-permanent member on the United Nations Security Council. It finds itself in Catch 22. Therefore, it cannot start discussing the matter until the matter, but the matter is going to be brought for implementation. What will Kenya do? That is the question on the floor, that under the countries that are supporting, who gave Somalia money to go and accuse us, what do we do to them? Do we continue having juice and wine and rice and mutton with some of them? What do we do about it?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari, and I think to a great extent, I tend to agree with my other colleague panelists who have spoken ahead of me. That is Professor Jared Onyari and Dr. Nyanchama, as regards to what is the way forward, Dr. Masanga, because much as you will agree with me and the rest of the panelists will agree that indeed Kenya is in catch 22, that Kenya is in dilemma. Dilemma in what sense? In the sense that it sits in the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member, but again, it is actually facing a situation where the ICJ, which is actually a constituent of the United Nations, is going to rule in as far as its conflict between Kenya and Somalia is concerned. And therefore, the question that anyone will be asking, how is it going to be, how is Kenya's image going to be portrayed out of this particular ruling or verdict? now that it has withdrawn itself, now that it has processed the ongoing case and the coming, of course, the verdict from the ICJ, what will be the way forward in finding then a solution to this crisis or to this conflict, Dr. Masanga? We cannot say that all is done or it is an end in itself, given that Kenya has withdrawn or has protested that we cannot continue participating in this ongoing case at the ICJ. Because by the end of the day, Dr. Masanga, we must therefore find a solution to this problem. It is not enough to say Kenya has withdrawn that, and therefore in itself, maybe we can now say the only option that remains is Kenya going to war with Somalia. Of course, those are also some of the cards at the table, but it should be used as, the last option when every other mechanism has thoroughly been exhausted and there's no any other choice other than Kenya now deciding to use, that extra force to regain its sovereignty and ensure that it protects its territorial boundaries, Dr. Masanga. But as it is, and I think as my colleague panelists have spoken about, Dr. Masanga, this protest and withdrawal by Kenya from a continued case at the ICJ really opens yet another chance and opportunity for all the participants, for all the stakeholders to go back to the drawing board. Even the United Nations itself, they will be going back to the drawing board and asking themselves, then how are we going to continue with this matter if we are not going to bring Kenya on board? We then need to go back to the drawing board and find what will be an amicable solution to this problem. Is it inviting the African Union? Is it having a UN-backed initiative in as far as this matter is concerned? So that by the end of the day, the people of Somalia and Kenya cannot go or should not go to war simply because of this maritime or these Indian Ocean waters or the riches that are in there, Dr. Masanga. We understand that they are interested parties, and we cannot maybe hate them blanketly. Understand it because of the interest they have. You have read, and we continue to read that these people have interest in this, of course, Indian Ocean waters because of its wealth in the gas deposits and oil deposits, and also the fishing industry as far as all those factors are concerned. So in itself, it is because of the interest that could as well be driving the driving motive behind this foreign nation coming to help Somalia. Because again, maybe they have invested or they intend to invest. But again, like the other panelists have spoken about, what is it or what gear then can Kenya engage in trying to understand what is the interest, for example, that UK has, or Britain has, or Turkey has, or Russia has, in as far as these waters are concerned? Why is it that they are taking sides and in support of Somalia, in as far as this, of course, the riches that are in these waters are concerned? That way, Dr. Masanga, by the end of the day, I can tell you we will find a solution and through a peaceful mechanism and in a diplomatic way, other than just allowing things to go, the flare-ups of, for example, the conflict between Kenya and Somalia to be worsened, Dr. Masanga. I think there's still hope at the end of the tunnel. We can still find a solution without necessarily going to war. I submit.
Thank you very much. Three people say there is still hope, a glimmer hope, some hope that the talks could bring an end to the conflict. At least for me, I'm still standing, and I don't know Miriam's position. The way I see things, I don't think there's anything that can be salvaged from this. Let's hear from Wesonga, then come to finally our parting shots. Wesonga, yes, briefly.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Masanga, and I'll try to be as brief and precise as possible. One thing I'll say that hypocrisy is a vice that cannot be forgiven anywhere in the world, because they say that even the repentance of a hypocrite is hypocrisy itself. So, and that draws us back to the people who pose as the allies of Kenya, like Britain and Qatar. And these are the people actually who are fueling this kind of feud between Kenya and Somalia, because they're interested in the gas and oil blocks that are in the Indian Ocean. Somalia on itself, it cannot be even able to pay some kind of money that are expected to be paid from them by making an application at the ICJ. It is a failed banana republic. And therefore, that points the fingers to the UK and other members like Qatar, who have been financing this particular kind of disagreement between these two countries. And one thing we have to remind them is that Kenya does not take that lightly, because we have been partners with the UK, for example, in strategic matters not limited to the fight against global terror. And therefore, when you look even at Qatar, Kenya is more strategically beneficial to Qatar in terms of bilateral relations. And if they continue supporting Somalia in this kind of daylight theft of our maritime territories, then Kenya should tell them in no unequal terms that we shall not sit back and see them siding with Somalia and sabotaging our sovereignty as we continue to support them in other economic and other diplomatic relations. Kenya should pull back and make sure that they understand the importance of having Kenya by its side. If that will not be agreed to, then Kenya should evaluate our working relationship with these two countries. I submit.
Miriam, for every good start, there is an end. We want to give our guest, Dr. Daniel Juma, to end this show. But before he comes in, for me, from international perspective, there will be a war. I don't see. How do we avert it?
Yeah, I think, Doc, going by what President Kenyatta said 2 weeks ago, that Kenya, as much as we are known to be a peace-loving country, but just don't try us, because we'll be ready to protect, the boundaries in the waters, in land, in whichever, the boundaries we have here. And so he said we respect another country's boundaries, and that other country should respect Kenya's boundaries. I think going with that tone of President Kenyatta, then I think Kenya is prepared. I think we're having a similar conversation about 2 weeks ago, just before President Kenyatta made, those pronouncements about there's a senior official in the government. He was not named, but it was on one of the dailies here, and he said the country is preparing for any eventuality. The country is readying up and it's beefing up its security apparatus across our border. So Kenya is prepared. We don't want to go into war, with
I am with them.
Yes, but should we be provoked to an extent where we have to protect the integrity of our boundaries, that Kenya has made it clear with no uncertain terms that it will do that? But also just to add on what I think Daniel said, because I think after that he will be being our guest panelist today, he will end the show for us. The issue, he mentioned Somalia should first focus on what is really happening, because we are in Somalia, we are trying to help Somalia stabilize so that the many refugees that are languishing in very bad state, and we have in Kenya and other countries, can go back to their country. But instead of Somalia trying to get its acting order and the country in order and the leadership over there, they're so busy aggressively pursuing a foreign policy, and they can't even get their acting. Can they first have their priority right and see that the country is stable enough before they start pursuing their foreign policies and others and trying to get into war with a country like Kenya, which has done nothing but be supportive to the process? They are all parliament. They all, I think, even the first government they had after the many years of war, did they not take their oath of office here in Nairobi? So that is how good we've been to Somalia. So I think what President Kenyatta said is, we love peace, but just don't try us like that.
We love peace, but don't try us.
Do not.
But all of you, before our guest concludes it for us, Miriam, I will be honest, from Nyachama, Onyari, I see Tawish also followed this one, saying there could be time. I don't see Olesisana, Nyachama. I don't see it. First of all, look, Kenya is sitting on the boundary. Have you people looked at the other side? Because Somalia has never known where the boundary is. Kenya knows where the boundary is. Therefore, Kenya is on the boundary. It is there. There must be a force to remove it, isn't it? So have you seen where we are? That's why Kenya has said any rubbish that you talk about the ICJ, we don't know. But we are already here. So if the ruling comes and says, for example, imagine, the ruling says, we agree with Somalia's presentation that we should have gone in a diagonal horizontal. Somalia wants a diagonal. What is that word it's called? Diagonal. That it goes down like this instead of this. Kenya is horizontal. If the court says it is because diagonal analysis of up to Australia or New Zealand, cut through India.
Maybe Mozambique, it will go down. Australia is a bit too far.
And maybe go and find another planet down there. It will follow the latitude, not longitude. You can see that. I've been told by some expert here. So, Miriam, that is already a war. Don't you see it? I don't see how Kenya will live and quietly park its ships and marines and go home and say, we have listened. So, Nyachama, as much as we all need peace, my brother, we all need it. Mr. Tawisho Lisana, we need it. I stand and I say, I don't think anybody now in the Foreign and Commonwealth Foreign Office listens to any deep talk until bigger organizations like AU can come down and say, let's sit down again. That is hopefully what Nyachama is saying, that there could be some other discussions. But I don't think, on my part, that Kenya will just keep quiet and watch its territory being trampled on. Even if the stones are falling on the mother, I think they are Kenya is willing to throw those. I submit myself. Daniel Juma, end it for us.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and I really want to thank you. This is a true friend of Kenya. This is someone who loves Kenya, and I've followed keenly how you have always stood with this country. And I remember there was a time you also tried, your best to try and enhance our sovereignty as a country. So this is a matter of national sovereignty. One of the reasons why we have been subjecting ourselves to international jurisdictions is because local courts, our local institutions were not able to handle some of these issues. And that is one of the reasons why I supported, I was not a supporter. I remember during the days of the ICC, when some people were saying, don't be vague, let's go to Hague,
Yeah.
I remember that, people wanted us to go to the Hague.
Yes.
But why do we need to go to the Hague? Yet we have our courts. We are a sovereign country. The US does not surrender its, judicial sovereignty to any international court, So when we had people saying, let's don't be vague, let's go, I was very sorry because I was very sad because we have institutions in this country, and we should have been, as a nation, our court should have been the ones actually taking care of the issues that took us to The Hague. I also believe, and also I agree, with Nairobi, that we have refused as a sovereign nation, to subject ourselves to the jurisdiction of the ICJ. We have refused. And we have no apology. And just like you have rightfully said, they cannot come and force us. We are the ones sitting there. We are sitting in the boundary. So there is no way they will come and remove us from there. So the ICJ, and I hope they're listening, we are the ones sitting on the boundary. So they need to listen to us and say, what do you want? How do we go about it? It's just like an example. If I and my wife maybe have a dispute, and I want to go to the Wazés in the village, to bring peace between me and my wife. But my wife says, I don't want this. I don't trust those villagers. I'm looking for a different way of doing it. Then the villagers should just, disqualify themselves from, from getting that issue. So that's why I agree. I agree again that we should sit tight. We should not allow, the ICJ to pretend that they have legitimate jurisdiction over this issue. The very fact that Kenya has raised complaints, the very fact that Kenya has complained and has said that some of those judges are biased, we have seen judges disqualify themselves in cases, where someone says, I do not believe in this judge, so this judge should disqualify themselves. So ICJ, as I've said earlier on, there's something called judicial restraint. They need to restrain themselves for the bigger interest, the interest of peace in the Horn of Africa. What is going on in the Horn of Africa is not a joke. The Al-Shabaab and what is going on in Somalia, this is not something that you'll play around with. But the moment you start squeezing Kenyan boundaries, Kenyan waters, squeeze us in the north and Tanzania also, then you are, reducing the capacity of Kenya, which is the economic powerhouse in the region. Kenya is the biggest economy in, the East African nations combined. We are the biggest economy. And the moment you start cutting down our powers in the coast, then you are making us vulnerable to terrorism. So as a peacemaker, as someone who believes in peace, I am calling upon the UN, the ICJ, let us restrain ourselves in this matter. ICJ should just tell Somalia and Kenya to go back and sort out, this issue so that we can again sit down and talk. That is my closing end of that matter.
Thank you very much, Miriam. And Dr. Daniel Juma, I thank you very much. At least take time on every Sunday. There are so many good peace, conflict resolution topics on our show on Sunday.
I will.
Take time, and anytime, just watch on Tuesday. In fact, we want to invite you on Tuesday when the ruling is taking place, because it will be televised live, so that you can make a comment if you are not busy. Wherever you be on the phone, anywhere, keep that number for entry. That number for Zoom is a permanent number. We have a permanent account with the Zoom. So it is your number anytime when you feel you have, this is your station. I want to thank you very much, Miriam. I want to thank all of you, Tawish, Joseph, Nachama. You've taught me something new. Don't throw a stone in the market because it could hit your mother. And then you say, Mom, why did I throw a stone? And Daniel Tawish, Daniel Wesonga, thank you very much for your beloved time out of your palatial new residence where you have not sent call the elders to fumigate the bad spirits. It's very bad. Daniel, this young man.
You're going to get an invitation, Doc.
No, you cannot go into a palatial home, buy a house, And you actually, I went to discover you bought the house and in a mortgage. So why do you, I am an investigative journalist and I find out all these things. I'm not like these Panama Papers. I am real. And I discovered you are actually in a mortgage without the uncle going there to throw some, ancestral problems of the royal land.
The uncle is going to get an invitation for the blessings, Doc, very soon.
Thank you very much. Miriam, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Thank you, all of you. I still stand. Kenya is sitting. We are on the border. And Kenya is on the border. So whatever tricks the international community tries to do, Turkey or Qatar, we shall meet you. And very soon, I think, the ambassadors of these countries should be summoned, given that even our football has been bewitched. You see, I am going to raise that on social media. Ruto brought a bad investor, a fake investor. Now the KFC, Kenya Football Association, brought a bad coach. Now, and the Turkey is bringing ships to take our oil. That is very bad for me. This whole week is going to work a motto. Thank you very much. Take care, all of you. This station there, 4 million, is for Africa, with Africa, by Africa, each other.